Water buffalo.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, guys? Old School Matt here, back with another Water Buffalo Training Method After Hours podcast. Today, we're joined by Mark Tomanek. Mark is a full-time diet and nutrition coach, as well as a full-time teacher teaching economics and government over there in Ohio. Today, we're joined with Mark to do more of a nutritional / diet / bodybuilding type podcast. We want to have him on here because we know that he's an expert in this field and he does very, very well with his clients. So without further ado, here Mark is.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. So as Matt said, my name is Mark. I'm up by Cleveland, Ohio, about 20 minutes west of Cleveland, if you know where that's at. And what I do is I am a high school economics teacher and government teacher. I'll be retiring this year to go full-time as a physique and general health coach. And it's been something that I've wanted to do for a long time, but really didn't know how to make it a lifestyle or make a living from it from the get-go. And so what I had to do is kind of develop an entire business model to be able to support that. I also own Competition Body's gym here in Avon Lake, Ohio, again, which is just 20 minutes west of Cleveland. Yeah, man, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, so I honestly have no idea how me and you started following each other on Instagram, but I know I either followed you or you followed me, and then we started, we talk once in a while, we'll send each other messages. But what really stuck out to me about your page and what you do is that you're, really honest. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm honest and brutally honest. But someone like yourself who actually in their captions would, describe what they're talking about in their photos or their posts, and they provide a lot of scientific evidence. So I just wanted to ask you a couple questions, Mark. Where did you start off with, learning and gaining this type of experience with bodybuilding, nutrition? And it all fits all into one category.
Right.
As a bodybuilder or someone who likes bodybuilding myself, I know that it kind of once you get everything, once you know everything about nutrition and physiology and training and everything, you want to start exploring different avenues of that practice without necessarily having to go to school for it or whatnot. So where did you get this love or this desire to learn this information from?
Yeah, so bodybuilding for me is hereditary because my dad was a bodybuilder back in the 80s and 90s. He actually started Competition Body's gym in 1986. So that was 4 years before I was born. And I come along in 1990 and my dad is competing in bodybuilding shows. So literally I got to watch, every day in the life of a bodybuilder. I got to watch him pose. I got to watch him eat. I came to the gym with him and he trained. Man, I was copying his poses, in my underwear when I was 3, it's something that was just instilled in me from such a young age that I wouldn't know any different today. And that's what was really unique about my situation is I got to see how his coach even coached, and I would absorb that information. I watched how my dad trained. I absorbed it all. I started training at 10 years old, my dad. And, a lot of people say that's pretty young, but at the end of when you really look at it, we were looking at isolation movements and focusing on form, correct execution, correct engagement. We focus on all those and prioritize those. And, I was really training more for wrestling. I went to college. I wrestled in college and I played rugby in college. So I did both those sports there at the collegiate level. And, after college, I really started to switch my gears and getting the idea about bodybuilding. I was I think I want to take my idea. I want to carry it on. I actually want to go further. I want to try to go pro in bodybuilding. And you say this in the beginning, and a lot of people say it and they follow through. Obviously, it's not easy to become pro. But at the end of the day, man, I've just been chasing it ever since 2014. I've been chasing this dream. And it's definitely not easy because I've switched back and forth between classic physique and bodybuilding. I went back and forth when that classic physique was introduced. And so, as I went along my journey, I've just learned more and more. It doesn't necessarily take a few classes or a degree to tell you that you know what you're doing. Really, it came down to I studied physiology books in depth. I've taken anatomy physiology classes. I've actually taken nutrition courses, and I've disputed things with the professors because they were wrong in some of the things that they were teaching, like calories are created equal. And that's not necessarily true. There's different ways when we start looking at things like nutrient timing. There's different ways that you can modify a physique and performance to basically better your body composition, better your performance. Is going to lead to more progress in the future. So, and then after that, I also had a ton of great mentors, looking at my coach, even who my coach is now, Austin Stout. He's a genius, man. He's mentored a lot of people. You look at John Meadows, Eric Serrano, all these guys, Dr. Eric Serrano, actually, and, you know, all these guys were just people I looked up to and followed very closely or learned directly from, that, you know, taught me what I need to know. And then, of course, it came with application and that experience. Once I started coaching people, I started a personal training. Then I went to physique coaching kind of privately. Once I did that, I got my feet wet and I understood physiology. I understood nutrition. I was studying dietetics. You know, I was studying things that were absolutely necessary for me to know in order to progress my experience level. And I just took in the information and I applied it. So now everything you see on Instagram is all applicable knowledge. You'll see me break it down and talk about it in depth because like I live it. I'm not taking things that I've copy and pasted off of Google and putting it in there and saying, hey, look, this is, you know, you always see anecdote come from me because I've just experienced so many, you know, with Tomanek Trained, we have like 250 people, maybe about 200 people right now, you know, on the roster between the coaches, and every single one of those people are different. So we've had to become a very adaptable and comprehensive coaching service that is all experience based, you know, and obviously there's knowledge backing that, there's studying backing that. I'm gonna tell you, experience rules the roost.
Yeah, definitely. So like for someone like myself, that's why honestly nowadays I don't even like to give anyone, like I don't like to sell myself as a coach yet, because I don't have the full experience, even though I've been doing it since I was 13, 14 years old. Someone like yourself who has double the amount of experience as myself, I'm sure that, you know, getting older and older, you started to feel more and more qualified the more experience you got. And that's why the business that we run now is a little different from something like yourself, where you do something very, very personal with somebody and you give them, you know, personalized stuff for like getting ready for competitions or just getting ready in general for some sort of, let's say, photo shoot or whatnot. That's why someone like myself doesn't really put my services out there for money yet, being so specifically close to somebody on a personal level, because I just don't feel like I don't have that experience yet to be doing it for a large amount of money or whatever that may be. You know, I was going to ask you a question. You know, how do you think that, you know, over the years, your progression of this knowledge has, you know, has it gotten, you know, has it gotten better over like a linear level, or has it been phases where you've learned more and more at certain periods of time or whatnot? In that.
Yeah, I really don't find anything to be linear ever in terms of like almost anything, whether it's acquiring knowledge, acquiring experience, progressing for yourself or progressing with your clients. Nothing's ever linear. And it's always just been this up and down phases or in spurts, you know, never digressing, you know, always progressing in some way, shape, or form. But, you know, I would consider staying the same also a form of that's not a form of progression at all either. So there's been times where, you know, I gained a new client, and then that client had a whole different set of biofeedback and attributes and health things that we needed to kind of tackle. And, you know, you have to learn on the fly sometimes. You know, when you start running into things like Hashimoto's, and you have to know how to manipulate and cause metabolic adaptations for those people with Hashimoto's, but also understanding what type of disease that is and the consequences that there are, you know, and why we use the medications we use and the interactions that can, you know, occur compared to someone that doesn't have Hashimoto's that has a healthy thyroid, and how can we even boost that metabolic adaptation even further? I mean, I've just ran into so many different clients, and, you know, as time goes on, as the clients are acquired, I'm learning, I'm progressing more and more. So, you know, my business has went in spurts. When I first started, we started out with a couple people, and it was a learning experience throughout that whole process. And, you know, in the first 8 months, we had a pro on the squad. You know, we created a pro. And that person is so much different than a general health client, you know, which is just having maybe some negative hormonal adaptations that we have to correct. They're so different. Like, you know, when you're constantly thrown into the fire with different variables, and you're forced to learn, you're either going to learn or you're going to back off, and you're going to kind of roll over and play dead. But at the end of the day, man, the more clients that come, I found myself adapting to that, you know, gaining more knowledge, digging in further to things, and reading more studies, reading more physiology, and understanding that. But once you kind of understand basic physiology, I found you can and you understand nutrition at the same time, you start connecting dots, and then it becomes easier. So it's like, once I get a new client, it's not like a learning experience. It's just connecting a dot from that client to that client. And go, oh, I'm seeing things that are relative. Let's go ahead and you know, try to run that same path. Excuse me, to run that same path with that specific client, but more modified to them. You know, so when it comes to like troubleshooting and things, which, man, sometimes I love facing problems, because then it forces me to learn, it forces me to evolve. Nothing's ever been a smooth ride with clients for the most part. You always got to learn. And that's, like I said, you can either shy away from that or you can step up.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess we'll move into a little bit more of your experience with bodybuilding preparation and getting people ready for shows. So like I was telling you earlier, I've helped maybe 8 to 10 people do bodybuilding shows, never charged anyone for it, just to get some basic experience. And I know there's a lot of information online that you can almost learn how to prep yourself for a show or prep somebody for a show. But there are also a lot of nuances that come into play because everyone's bodies are very different, obviously.
Right.
So do you remember the first person you coached for a show and how that went?
Yeah. So first person I ever coached was a men's physique client named David. This was in 2012. Man, he came in freaking peeled. He was absolutely peeled. He lacked some shape for men's physique. He lacked a little bit of roundness in the muscle bellies, which wasn't like an issue of being flat. It was just that was his structure. And we can't change muscle bellies or where they insert. We can't change those things. And he came to me with, I think, like 12 weeks to work. So, like, I worked on the fly, man, 12 weeks. And we brought him in absolutely just peeled. He ended up taking second in his class out of I don't know how many people. So, I mean, hey, I'm going to take that, top 3 placing in your first show, first time ever prepping somebody. It was pretty good.
Was he a friend of yours or?
Yeah, just a friend from college.
Yeah.
And I stuck with coaching people that were my friends all the way for like 5 years. And I just worked with the same people. I'd maybe pick up a couple people here and there, or they'd fall off and then they'd come back until I opened up myself to the public in 2018.
Yeah, it seems like we don't really know each other, but I'm following a similar path like yourself. Like with the Water Buffalo training method, our training program is not meant for like getting ready for a show or anything like that. It's more of just trying to get yourself better, learn exercises better, learn how to perform exercises better, learn different principles and whatnot of training and diet and supplementation, nutrition and whatnot. But when it gets to that level where it's like one-on-one, where you're posing with somebody or someone's getting on a Skype call to talk about specific food that they don't like to eat and how you can work around that or whatnot, or these macros aren't working for me, or, this, whatever it may be, it takes a certain amount of knowledge and a certain amount of experience to do. And like you and I were talking about earlier, I think the best way to do it is just to kind of like just get your feet wet and do it for free for a little while. Offer your services and your time almost like an investment, like you're learning how to do something, like you're learning a trade the same way you're going to help somebody is going to be almost like your canvas. You're going to be painting a picture on them. And I never recommend any drugs or anything like that to anybody because I don't feel I don't feel qualified to do so. I know, I'm assuming that you've worked with clients with PEDs and whatnot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Men and women. And you brought up an interesting point, because I think it's really important to note that, like, when you don't know something, you like, don't ever be afraid to admit it, and like go and outsource and find that information. Yeah. Look, we as coaches, we can't have all the answers. So don't get all worked up when you don't have the answer to something. Like, just be like, all right, well, I'm going to find the answer to this, or I'm going to get somebody that knows the answer. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's what I've done for my business. Also, I've gotten coaches that know the answers to things that I might not, or specialize in something that I may not. They may have some qualities that I don't. Because at the end of the day, man, even as a coach, and I've, like I said, I've prepped pros, I've done it all from top to bottom, except for get to Olympia yet, which I think I'll be there in 2021. I truly believe that as good as a coach as you can be, you're still not going to have all the answers. So that was a really important point that you made, that you kind of a introspection you made. Like, I don't really feel comfortable with this yet. I don't know enough. I'm not going to touch it yet.
Yeah. And I know a lot of kids my own age have asked me about taking SARMs and taking pro hormones and stuff like that. And I mean, I can tell you as much as I know, but I'm not going to like make recommendations on things that potentially could have hazardous, health consequences to you later in life. And I guess this is another, talking point that we can talk about is, when did you start learning or experiencing stuff with PEDs? Because it's a big step. Once I can coach someone for a show, and it could be like a friend of mine, and I could do everything completely wrong. I can have him on 1,200 calories a day for 4 weeks. He'll recover from that. But if I were to do something, crazy with steroids or SARMs or diuretics or something like that, then I'm starting to get into some waters where it could be, things that might not have might not be able to be reversed later in their life. That's why if people ask me for help, I've had a couple of people ask me for cycle advice. I've never taken steroids or SARMs or pro hormones, so I don't know,
Right.
On a personal experience. So I don't feel comfortable telling them what to do. Even though I've written about it, I've read about it, I've learned about it. I've never had that experience, and nor do I want the experience at this moment to give someone that type of advice.
Yeah.
So.
Dude, drugs are tricky, man, because here's the thing. Whether you're talking about SARMs, I'm not a fan of SARMs. You're talking about pro hormones or designer steroids, or you're talking about actual steroids. Look, there's always an inverted U shape with these drugs, meaning like the bottom of the U being like, okay, you're not using it all. You're not experiencing anything.
Yeah.
You start using a certain amount and you're getting better. At some point, there's a tipping point at that top of that inverted U where there's going to be some negative side effects, some negative adaptations that start occurring. And you have to be able to recognize those. And those aren't the same for every individual. If I give someone, 500 milligrams a test and another person 500 milligrams a test, they may respond. Their biological responses are completely different. Like, it's not even remotely the same. Even how they feel mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that is completely different. And it's so broad across the spectrum. There's no way I can tell you, hey, run this, you're going to feel exactly this way.
Yeah.
I can tell you, you could expect these things. Here's what we also want to watch out for. And so when it comes to drugs, man, it's really individualized. It's really tricky. And especially with women, a lot of people run the problem with women is I see a lot of polypharmacology going on where there's multiple drugs intermixing with each other, and they're not accounting for things like the side effects that can come up that, like you talked about, they could potentially be permanent if they're abused, right? The tricky thing about drugs also is that there's, again, you come back to that inverted U, there's a way to use them properly and benefit from them a lot, because you go back to actually study the pharmacology of all these drugs. They were created for a specific purpose in medicine to be used to benefit, right? Are there side effects? There's side effects with anything. Dude, there's side effects with ibuprofen.
Yeah.
So, like, at the end of the day, man, everything is toxic to some extent. It's just you have to find what is that extent. And you have to know better of what to use, when to use it, and what to use it with and what not to use it with. And that becomes really tricky.
And a lot of that also has to do with, like you were saying, it's very case dependent, especially when it comes to like more dangerous drugs. Certain people can tolerate a certain amount more than others, and some people might not be able to. Going back to the question, probably it got buried. What was do you remember the first time that you experienced that with some, like the first client you worked with? Was it after you used it yourself, or was it, after just being able to learn experience, or what was it? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was definitely after I used. I use myself as a guinea pig for the most part, and I take notes on biofeedback. And when I first started using with clients, I used at very safe therapeutic dosages. I studied the pharmacology of these drugs. I looked up all the studies that were out there on these drugs and what they were being used, and then what the efficacy was at that dosage. Looking at also how do people respond at certain dosages, and then I would just start at the smallest dose and then work my way to wherever I needed to be based on the biofeedback I was getting. But it's super case dependent. Now I work with men, women, and all divisions on all different types of peds. There's not one that I haven't used for the most part, except for like a few like extreme designer-based steroids that are very new to the scene that people are creating. People are always creating just odd compounds out there.
And now I know like the pro hormones they're constantly just being changed because of the regulations by the FDA. So that's why I tell a lot of people, like when they find or not a lot, but there's a small percentage of people. But to me, it is like any amount of people that are willing to do something that could potentially have some harm to them I don't like to see that. So I try to lead them in the right way. Specifically pro hormones, what's your opinion on that? And for people taking it that aren't doing it, that aren't going to compete and stuff like that, do you think that it's safe?
Yes. So here's the deal with pro hormones and any type of oral designer steroid is that they're all hepatotoxic, meaning they're toxic to liver. So if you want to measure, if you were to ask me, what should I use this pro hormone or should I use injectable testosterone? I'm going to tell you injectable testosterone every single time, 100 out of 100 times, because it misses that hepatotoxic factor there, which is huge, So with pro hormones, the side effects are greater because they are oral and it's more instantaneous. you'll feel the effects with the hormone within 24 hours, whereas testosterone, the blood levels take time to get to where they're at and then you can start assessing biofeedback based off of that. So I really think it's important for people to steer away from pro hormones. And I would say a lot of these people are also drinking while they're doing this because they're not competing. So they're there's a ton of things that they're using that are toxic to the liver at the same time. And man, that's so counterproductive. And so whereas testosterone is injected intramuscularly, you're not going to have the same feedback or abuse on certain organs, like the kidneys, and you're going to be better off, honestly. And I think any male that's about 25 should start getting their testosterone checked regularly, because TRT may be something that you may want to use, because I see a lot of issues with men over 25 starting to get low testosterone or low T. I think that's going to be really important in the coming future for men over 25 to start getting checked. So, because there's a lot of negative things that come with low T as well as high T. So,
Yeah, it's finding that that balance. A lot of people don't like to hear, but a lot of the times, or I would say 95% of the things in life have to do with some sort of balance, some sort of level that you can sustain. But no, the reason why I asked you that is because I actually do the same thing. If someone asks me about taking pro hormones and I know that they shouldn't, I kind of give them the information that I know. I'm just like, a lot of times, if you're not willing to quit your bad habits, let's say you smoke weed a lot and you drink, you're doing a lot of things that are already toxic. And let's say you take Advil twice a day because you have knee pain. And now on top of this, you're going to take a pro hormone. Now your liver is going to be, influx with all this sort of toxicity. And it's not the best case scenario for what you want to do. And a lot of times people think that it's going to take them to the next level within, weeks or days, which it might if you train hard and you eat properly. But a lot of times, like I was saying, like you obviously know, it just comes down to just fixing a couple things. And this can kind of transition into another topic I wanted to touch on is when you start off with a new client, how do you, let's say, have you had any, I gotta say this first, have you had any clients that have never been into the gym before who just hit you up like, hey, I want to start working out. What should I do?
So I haven't personally. That's why I brought on another coach who's really experienced in that field. I deal with people that are mainly competitors that have competed before, or are more advanced. Whereas I have coaches on staff that are there to help people. Literally, they will hop on Zoom with you and walk you through the exercises in the gym. Like we go all out for our clients at all times. So I haven't worked with somebody like that personally, because I've always just worked with experience, or preferred to work with experience.
Yeah. So I like to work with people. I like to help people that know what they're doing. But like I said before, I'm not really necessarily doing things for my business in terms of getting ready people for competitions and whatnot. So I kind of have to just have a wider net of people that I work with. But I think, working with anybody, and I don't know if you would agree with this, there needs to be some sort of base foundation, especially even if someone knows a lot. When you work with a new client, do you, kind of set out the foundation, kind of set some rules and stuff before you, started getting into the gravy, the nitty gritty stuff with them?
Yeah, man. The expectations always have to be there. I'm setting here's my expectations of you, and I want to know your expectations of me as well, because we have to be on the same exact page. I get a lot of people that come to me, and it's a perfect example, actually. People that come to me and want to lose weight, but they're not eating enough calories. The progesterone's in the dirt, cortisol's through the roof. It's just progesterone steal the whole time. And you can't cut those people down. You can't lose body fat. And, also people come to me and say, I want to lose weight. I'm not a weight loss coach. I'm a physique improvement coach or a general health coach. So I'm going to do what's in your body's best interest. And so it's really important to set the tone right off the bat and say, hey, here's my expectations of you. Here's what I foresee happening. And this is what we need to do in order to get you to your goal. And sometimes it's complete opposite of what they want.
Exactly. So an example for me too, I get a lot of people that say, hey, I want to lose weight right away, or I need to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. And a lot of times I'll tell them, hey, listen, I want you to stop drinking 1 time a week. If you're smoking, don't smoke for the next 2 weeks. And I want you to take 3 walks for the next 2 weeks. If you can do that, come back and then message me. And 90% of the time they'll never message me again. Just to get them set into, that's what I was trying to lay down as some sort of foundation, like you were saying, is give them some sort of expectations, let them hit a small goal, because on the counterpart of competitors, people you work with are already motivated, they want to be better, but people that aren't in that state, A lot of times you're just getting them kickstarted, getting them going. I don't know if you agree on that.
Yeah, man, it's all about, like, if you can't do the little shit, you have no business with my services, because I'm going to make you do a lot of shit. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't simply just walk for me a couple times a week, you have no business working with me. And not to say that I'm better than you, it's to say that, like, look, you're not even meeting these small expectations. Yeah. How are you supposed to meet these big expectations I have of you? And I'm telling you, I'm going to be very honest. My expectations are extremely high. I work with some pretty incredible elite athletes, and my expectations of my elite athletes are the same for my general health clients. Now, do they have different paths that they take? Yes. It's not all one cookie cutter. Like, here's the strictness of your routine. It's no, I want you to meet every single weekly goal I have for you. And I mean that for my general health clients too. Yeah,
definitely. Obviously what the clientele that me and you work with, or we have in our own respective businesses, are very different, but the psychological effect or impact as a coach is somewhat the same. It just depends on the level of person that you're dealing with. So also I wanted to touch base too on what you think like the industry is right now, and how do you think it's going to, move forward into, different types of venues and avenues that are going to happen later in the year and whatnot, not only to do with bodybuilding, but kind of like the mix of everything that's coming together. Cause I know The Rock is doing like his own show and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Now they're doing different things where they're involving more and more people like strongmen and stuff like that the past couple of years, and everything coming together. Do you like the direction that this is going in? Do you think that's good? How do you think it's going to impact coaching and whatnot? I know it's a really loaded question, but kind of take it where you want to take it.
Cool. Man, I love the direction of like expanding the popularity of bodybuilding, expanding classes. And I know a lot of people, like, I'm a traditionalist when it comes to bodybuilding. I love the 90s. I love bodybuilding in the 90s. There's nothing better. It's the golden era of, what I believe in. 80s too are great. But at the end of the day, man, if we're going to expand this, if we're going to become more mainstream, which is great, that's more money for the industry. And that's going to be better production value for the bodybuilders. It's going to be better production value for the expos. This is going to drive more money in the pockets of athletes that need it. It's going to help people it's going to help give them jobs. Like, if we're talking about from an economic standpoint, like, it's going to be phenomenal. Yeah. The Rock they postponed their show till 2021 with Danny Garcia. Yeah. Because of like what's happening currently, so I really like the direction of economically where we're heading. I really like to see that with bodybuilding, aesthetics is coming back. I like to see that a lot, and people are being rewarded for keeping their waist tight. They're not rewarding just giant anymore. You got to be hard. You got to be full. I really like that they're raising the standards there, and that's fantastic. Like I said, I love that they're adding new divisions to accommodate new, but different physiques in terms of like biomechanics and structure and development, because those are things you can't change. You can't change biomechanics. You can't change structure. You can't change, your proportions to an extent. You're kind of stuck with what you got. And there's other divisions now to accommodate those people and make it more of a sport of variety of people, of all walks of life, which is really, really cool. In terms of like coaching and where I see this going, I'm seeing a lot of good things happening. And, Justin Mahaley is another coach that, I work closely with, and we really do have a large chunk of the industry in terms of like coaching. And our coaching businesses are both, I know his is giant, and I'm trying to be in competition with him. We're friends, but our goal is the same. Our goal is to end bad coaching. Like, we want to basically put bad coaches that have been using drugs improperly, don't know nutrition properly. We want to put those coaches out of business because they're damaging a lot of people. And the fact of the matter is, those people now come to me, those clients come to me, and they're ruined for a year, for 6 months. And I got to take a year or 6 months to improve their health and bring their blood work back to nominal. Mm-hmm. And so the overall goal for me is to basically end this bad practice. And that's why I've stepped up the way I have, and why I'm pushing all the knowledge that I do out in social media, because it's important for me to get this information to people so people can recognize good coaches from bad coaches. And also it teaches other upcoming coaches, which is great. So it's an educational basis is what, I'm trying to push. And so I foresee really a lot of your, local hero coaches going out of business here soon. And that's happening. And you're seeing more coaches with teams like myself and Team Mahaley step up. And there's a couple others too, I know Cuts has his own coach or his own coaching staff. Bear Aesthetics has their own coaching staff. They're all pretty big services. Those are stepping up, and they're bringing good quality coaching, to the industry, which is really important. It's no longer, hey, let me text you your diet and you're going to follow this until I say. It's about measuring biofeedback. It's about looking at training videos and making adjustments to people in real time. Yeah. It is personalized. It is personalized to the furthest extent.
Yeah, I love that. And I really like to, like I said, I don't have any clients that I, train on a daily basis where I'm like looking down on what they're doing all the time. But I definitely like how, social media and the good part of social media has given us a platform to really put out content, put out information that's seen in real time, and people can like use it in real time, and you can obviously message and talk back and forth in real time. But you hit a good point there talking about like bad coaches. What would you say, like what makes someone a bad coach in your opinion?
Yeah, so I just have actually a numerous clients come to me from a coach, and I won't say which one because I don't want to put them on blast, but there was a couple common themes amongst all these women that came to me. Is one, slow response time, 2 to 3 days for this coach to respond, and that's just completely unacceptable. Whereas I answer within the hour or within like a couple hours if I'm doing something. You know what I mean? The only time I'm not responding is when I'm sleeping or I'm training. Like those are the only two times. Another one was pushing drugs too hard and doing it improperly. Not knowing the pharmacology of these drugs, which is really important, especially with women. Not looking at blood work is another one. And these women have low progesterone values or no progesterone. They're not getting their cycle. And then we have to go back and revamp everything, including lifestyle factors to get their cycles back. Not reviewing training videos, which that's what you do. You build training videos for people so they can do it right. You know how important that is.
Yeah.
And there's coaches out there if you're not reviewing training videos of your clients, like what are you basing your changes on in training? You know what I mean?
I think a big point that I like to hit on too and talk about too is, a lot of people put emphasis on diet, which is very, very important, but a lot of times people find problems in the way that they train. A lot of their problems come from just training. Like I said, obviously diet is number one and will always be number one, but training comes in, in my opinion, very close second. There's a lot of people that, do lackluster. And when I talk about training, I talk about, full spectrum of training, not just weights, cardio, recovery, warm-ups, doing things properly so you can, be in your most optimal, time. When you're in the gym for that hour and 15, however long you're in the gym for, those minutes are really crucial. And if you're not doing the things properly, I don't think that you can make progress, especially for people that have been doing it for a long time that have, they've been doing the diet, they've been pushing the diet, they've been doing everything they can. And a lot of times that, just changing the training style or just changing a couple things in what they're doing in the same, they can train the same, but just changing little things can make huge differences. I don't know if you would agree on this or, think
Dude.
But.
Definitely, man. I agree with that 100%. There's just small tweaks that need to be made to people's training when they come to me. And this happens all the time. This is why I have all my clients send me training videos of specific body parts. If it's like a weaker body part, it's not that you're not doing enough exercises or you're not doing enough reps or enough sets. It's that you're doing it improperly. You're not engaging properly. So like when I have my clients send me videos over WhatsApp and I completely break down the whole entire movement. I'm like, hey, look, here's where your foot pressure is messing up. Here's what, even changing your grip, changing the trajectory of your elbow pathway, hips, wherever they're moving, looking at muscles that are firing over muscles that aren't firing at the same time that should be. Dude, all those little things, it's not that we need to do more. It's that you need to do the things better that you're already doing.
Exactly.
It's and one of my favorite sayings is more is not better, but better is better.
Yeah.
It applies here to training.
Something that I made up, and I don't know if you'll know what I mean exactly when I say it, but I say you don't have to, like when people say you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you don't, but you have to change your tires once in a while. So like you need to always, have fresh things going on, new. And that doesn't mean, like you said, doing like, these weird yoga, Bosu ball curls or something, but it's maybe just changing, the angle at which you're pulling with, on one day versus another. And, something that I have found that has helped a lot too is mobility in certain movements. Like a lot of my friends, a lot of kids in my fraternity, they, talk about, it's kind of like a joke, and too, is like small calves or whatever. But a lot of times people have small calves, not because they have bad genetics. It's probably, 60-40. A lot of times it does have to do with genetics, obviously, but if you go and try to test their ankle mobility or their knee mobility, a lot of times it's shit. Like they can't, get their foot into that position to where they can get the full range of motion for the calf training, or any body part for that.
Yeah, it's with calves especially, it's because they have poor dorsiflexion, which is really important. If you can't get that, and you don't have the ankle mobility enough to actually stretch the ankle from this position to this position all the way down. Like if you don't have that flexibility, you're not going to be able to train calves, because your calves all day are used to doing from a flat position to up all day while walking. They never have to pull from this angle here.
Yeah, that's just, that's one of the little things that a lot of people like to overlook, and they like to, oversimplify in the way, like you were saying, a lot of the coaches, I guess, out there, bad coaches, they kind of just write, 3 sets of 10 reps. And, that's very intuitive, and that gives someone a baseline of what to follow. But, if you want to work with somebody on the next level and, kind of have them improve and always stay improving, there needs to be more of a breakdown of what that entails. So.
Yeah. And dude, I don't put rep ranges on my working sets for my clients. I don't put rep ranges because there is no true hypertrophy rep range. It's all about meeting the stimulus threshold. There's a certain threshold, whether you get there at 10 reps or you get there at 20 reps, it doesn't matter. Like your body is adaptive. So it is adaptive in every sense. And that goes for training too. So our objective of every training session is to hit that threshold and go a step above it. And then the next one, a step above it. And you keep building on that. And that's how you get better. That's how you grow. It's how you force your body to adapt.
Exactly.
Because I don't want people getting so focused on reps. I only got to do 10 reps. No, you have to go until you hit the stimulus threshold.
Exactly. And I mean, a lot of times, like for people that do, it just depends on what you want to do to your goals. A lot of times power lifters and people that do things for strength purposes, a lot of times they use reps, and I understand that they use reps for a specific, goal in their mind, and they're more about the numbers. But when it comes to body recomposition and wanting to, look better and feel better, perform better in that aspect, I feel like you were saying, reps, they matter, but they don't really matter. And kind of like something I wanted to talk about too. I know you're a big proponent of someone who says not all calories are created the same. And I agree with that. I agree with that to an extent. And obviously we know that like losing weight has to do with calorie deficit and whatnot. And there's a whole bunch of, debate on that side, but where would you say you stand in that, aspect of coaching? Are you more of like do you follow strict macros? Do you, how do you gauge your clients' progression? Like what do you do diet wise? Now, obviously not going to get into the details specifically about what you do with every client, but it's an overview basis.
Yeah. So dude, my coaching is completely adaptable. I have different dieting techniques I use for almost everybody. And first and foremost, I use all 3 macros. I use meal plans for people that need them or want them, but I can also do a hybrid between the two that I've developed. And so whichever the client prefers is what I provide. If there's a client that needs keto for a specific purpose, we go keto. If there's intermittent fasting for a specific purpose, we use intermittent fasting. If there's just a traditional low carb, high fat diet, and for that works better for that person, we're going to use that. If it's high carb, low fat, we use that. Again, it's like whatever the client needs. So I don't ever say like I have a specific style, because I don't do it all. We have clients with different forms of diseases, rheumatoid arthritis. We have people with, like I was talking about Hashimoto's earlier. You have people with different metabolic deficiencies or metabolic diseases, type 1, type 2 diabetes, all across the board. And we have to accommodate all of those. But when I say all calories aren't created equal, that's not saying a calorie is not a calorie. It's just what else does that calorie come with?
Yeah. And
that may come with other minerals that are necessary for thyroid function or hormonal production. And so when you tell me that a loaf of bread is in 20 grams of carbs from a loaf of bread is the same as 20 grams of carbs from something like a banana, we're talking different things here, because there's micronutrients involved that are imperative, or there's, some minerals that come with that. It's like measuring protein between vegans and non-vegans. You look at 20 grams of protein from something like peas and 20 grams of protein from something like white isolate. Very different in terms of bioavailability, very different in terms of EAA or leucine content per gram of protein. It's very different. So Also, then you start digging into, okay, what minerals are missing from a vegan diet? Okay, selenium, iodine, tyrosine, those things are necessary for thyroid, healthy thyroid production. We need to include those. So then that's when you start picking things apart and becoming really adaptive and really specific as a coach and going, okay, I know my client needs these things because they're on a vegan diet. I have vegan bodybuilders and they kick ass, but I have to make sure that we're making up for all those lost minerals that vegans don't get. Even though it says they're getting 160 grams of protein, they may not truly be getting 160 grams of usable protein that is actually driving muscle protein synthesis.
And what a lot of people don't know or don't understand fully is that when you're dieting and you're training and whatnot, you need to have these specific nutrients and vitamins and whatnot. And that's why I'm big on supplementation too. I don't know if you are, but I like to take certain supplements in my diet. I try to cover everything with just the food, and I use supplements as like an insurance policy. We just left off with we were talking about supplementation. So I just want to get your opinion, Mark, really quick on supplementation. How you're talking about vegan bodybuilders and whatnot, but what are some supplements that you think are important? And like I was talking about too, I use supplements almost like an insurance policy, but I also do think that they have a very important role in the amount of energy output that we do in our performance as well. So I'll let you kind of take the floor with that one.
Yeah, so there's a ton of different supplements out there, man, and I think it's first and foremost is important to understand that kind of like the priority list here is, like we were just talking about the priority list being nutrition, training, and everything that comes with that, and then I throw a third one in there being sleep. After that, we can start looking at supplementations and what's needed for that specific purpose or person. Whatever their goal might be or whatever the person absolutely needs. So someone, like women, one thing I always want all my women taking is an Omega supplement with EPA and DHA. Those Omega-3s are vital. I want, if people are having digestion issues, there's a certain green supplement I use with probiotic and digestive enzymes and all the micronutrients in there. And that usually clears up any digestion issues. If we need something further, we can look at different fiber supplements or looking at fibrous foods. We also use things like betaine, pepsin. It depends on like what we need and what problem we're running into. But if there's a problem, man, we can definitely fix it with a supplement. If there's joint issues, there's joint supplements out there we could use. If we're talking about fat burners, well, there's a whole list of fat burners we can go down that are different and they operate on different pathways that are super, super helpful. Not saying that you need fat burners that'll burn fat, but I'm telling you, they help for sure.
So I was thinking more along the lines of like you were covering with an omega-3 supplement. Like I never go a day without taking omega-3 just because I don't eat, salmon all the time and I don't eat fatty. Normally I try to get them as much as I can with my eggs and whatnot. But, eating quote unquote like a bodybuilder a lot of times requires us to omit certain foods out of our diet in certain times, especially when you're trying to, lose weight and whatnot. A lot of times we can't always hit everything with our diet and whatnot. So I like to supplement things that I feel like I'm not getting, with diet. And one of those things, including omega-3 supplement, is a vitamin D3 supplement. I don't know if you take one as well.
Yep. Especially being up here in Cleveland, man. Yeah. There's at the pinnacle of like it being dark and gloomy and snowy up here, I get about 15,000 IUs a day.
Yeah.
Because I'm inside the whole time. Like you don't go outside at all, So whereas but then summer comes around, now I'm only using 10,000. And as I get outside here more and more, I'll cut that down to 5,000.
Yeah. I'm an indoor person. I like to be outdoors a lot too, but I live in Florida, so I can get it from the sun. But a lot of times a lot of the work I do, especially now with the quarantine's remote. So like I'm inside for like 10 hours, 12 hours a day. So I honestly haven't been outside for like 4 days. So like, it's been, I always, like I said, almost like an insurance policy. And as long as you're not like obviously overdosing yourself, I don't think there's a problem. And really quick, I want to touch on something too. Do you believe in like nootropics and stuff like that? Have you taken nootropics before?
Yeah, I have to be careful with how many nootropics I use and the consistency of which I use them at. I'm not a big caffeine guy. So if I'm going to turn to something that's more stimulating in my mind, I'm going to use a nootropic. Morpho Brain is the one that I look at from Morphogen Nutrition. What I find is sometimes it kind of depletes my neurotransmitters a little bit too much, whether that's serotonin or dopamine. It gives me, if I use it too much, I get kind of like a depressed state. So I have to be careful about
Gotcha.
just my frequency of use. But dude, I'm telling you, you get a good one and they work. And I think they work better than Adderall. And I don't like the effects of Adderall and what it does being a methamphetamine. So I like to find other measures.
I started taking ginkgo biloba,
Yeah.
probably 6 months ago. And I do it every 2 months. I'll take 120 milligrams. I think that's a dose. 120 milligrams is what the one pill is. And I was just curious. I honestly don't know too much about them. I do, research once in a while on them. I kind of just started taking them because I heard good things about them and I kind of wanted to experience on how they helped me. And I actually took like a caffeine break. So I use them, and I'll use them. Like I said, for the past 6 months, I've done 2 months on, 2 months off, just to see how they've helped. But I think the longer I use them, the more of a building effect it has on me. I think I need to, at least for someone like myself, I need to use them for a little bit longer period of time for me to see the effects right away. I don't get the effects right away, but that just might be because I just take ginkgo. I don't take a mixed compound.
A lot of the nootropics today, and I'm not an expert in nootropics by any means, but they're using a lot of mushroom extracts and microdosing them, and not for heroic doses and psychedelic purposes, but they're using things like lion's mane, king's trumpet. What's another one? I don't know. I can't think of off the top of my head, but they're using these and they're putting them in nootropics because they do have neurological benefits to them. A lot of times, and something like also Zamite, which is thrown in the new Morphobrain product, and it's incredible. Literally, they do work, man. It lights up your brain.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I think one of the main general things that we got to in this talk was there's a lot of different moving parts in this equation that we like to call fitness and whatnot. And I think that a lot of them do come with a lot of knowledge and experience. But there is a lot of good base knowledge out there for people to kind of get on and learn about these different things. And I wanted to ask you, a couple more questions before we cut it off. What do you think are some of the most important, resources that have guided you towards, where you've learned it, other than just books and whatnot? Maybe some mentors or some people that you like to listen to and you look up to in our industry or maybe outside of our industry.
Yeah. So one of the mentors, obviously my current coach, he's a really good resource, is Austin Stout. He's a really good one. Joe Jeffrey, he's from the UK. He's really good as well in terms of the knowledge that he puts out and the material he puts out. John Meadows is a phenomenal resource. Yeah. He's been around the industry forever, and that's one guy he just had a certain health complication. It was due to a blood disease he has, not due to anything related to bodybuilding.
They thought he had a heart attack, right? But he didn't have one.
Yeah, it ended up being blood clots. And, he's a guy that's been around for decades. Why wouldn't you follow him and what he does? Another resource to listen to, you can find some really good people on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Iron Intellects, which I write for that website. That's a great tool because there's doctors, people with masters. There's very high up coaches and very popular coaches that are very evidence-based that are on there writing constantly and dropping new material, new videos. So that's a great one. Let's see. Yeah, there's a ton of books out there we can get into. Lyle McDonald has a few good books that are great. Alex Kickel has a podcast, Beast Fitness Radio. He gets into some topics. He covers them pretty well. You can pick up a few things. He might be hard to follow sometimes because he gets pretty in depth with things sometimes, but then leaves some parts out. But at the same time, it's still a good resource.
Yeah.
Man, if you could follow anything, and I forget what the actual Instagram is, but they hold conferences all over. And Eric Serrano is a doctor here in Ohio. He's at a lot of those conferences. Manus Buckle's at those conferences. So they have really good discussions. Even John Meadows goes to those discussions and holds different, if you go to seminars with really good people, even people like Jason Theobald, man, I'm telling you, you can get a lot from those guys picking up at a seminar.
Yeah, no, I would love to go to, I sent you a talk the other day from a guy named Robert Lustig, Dr. Robert. I don't know if you ever heard of him before, but.
No, I haven't heard of him before that.
Yeah. Did you watch the thing by chance?
I didn't get through the whole thing, but I started watching it and then I had to get back on work. But I'm interested to see where he's going to go with it.
Yeah, I like to, I've listened to my fair share of bodybuilding podcasts and Q&As and, everything from RX Muscle to Cali muscle, like, there's a lot of different resources out there. But I like to broaden my horizons, and I think that was a good point. All the research you listed, I'm sure, are great resources, and I know a lot of them. But that there's a lot of mixed, but there's also a lot of good information out there as well. And it just, a lot of the times I like to pick my information based off of like credibility, being probably credibility and resources being, the mix for number one. And then who the person is too, obviously matters, like personally. But I like evidence-based things. I'm sure you do, but some people like anecdotally based things. But I like things that have to do with evidence. And then, the person that's talking about it has to have some sort of experience or some sort of, merit. But there's also the flip side of things, to where there's many doctors out there that, put out bad information because they have a narrative to play. But if you mix, evidence, and we're talking good evidence that's non-biased, that doesn't have any sort of like funding from a specific industry, and someone who has a title or someone who has, credibility, I think that any information out there is readily available, and it's great stuff to learn and just take notes on,
I think that, when it comes to these studies that are being done, it's important to look at who the researcher is, what type of agenda, and who's backing this research, who's funding it. And, a lot of the research we use, obviously, I love research. I love reading the newest research, but we have to understand that, look at the actual population being studied. When you're looking at that, especially for bodybuilding, like we have to be very careful, because there's a lot of studies that come out that say, you only need this much protein. But anecdotally, we find in a bunch of other people, which also matter, that aren't being studied, that protein count, the higher it goes, and there's a certain point where there's obviously negative feedback, but the higher it goes, the more muscle mass we do add. And so there's a lot of studies that are great to use as like this, like, okay, this is the threshold. This is where people were, this is what we found scientifically. Now let's base all of our movements off of this and then individualize from there. And that's really important to do as a coach. If you don't individualize and you only go by research only and not by biofeedback or anecdote, you're missing the bigger picture, because there's outliers to every bell curve, and those outliers matter.
And this is just an example. I know there's plenty of these, like this is really important too, not just who does the research in the study. That's obviously important for no bias and whatnot, but also who they're studying. A lot of times, like you said, there was a study that tested egg white protein versus, I think it was whey protein. And it found that, the woman couldn't absorb, drinking the liquid egg whites over a certain amount of grams, and it only absorbed 50% of the amount that they drank or whatever. But when you go and look at these women, they had, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was 5 women they studied, and they had some sort of digestive disease. And a lot of times they just kind of highlight, okay, you can't absorb this amount of protein from egg whites, and you only absorb 50% of the egg whites that you drink. But then you go and look at the study, and there's only 5 people being studied, and these people all had some sort of disease. Right. And a lot of times, like you were saying, it just depends on what is being studied and who's being studied, that can really impact, how should we choose, is this really a study, or is this almost just another anecdote that was written on some scientific website or a scholarly article. Right. So a lot of times
that's why you need to try to find meta-analysis. When you get a meta-analysis, those are the best, because what they're doing is they're taking research from many different studies and then putting it all together and then coming to a better conclusion.
I think that's a really good point too, is if you're going to, and a lot of times I find myself reading a study, and then I go and I look and I'm like, wait, this is like isolated on this basis, let me see if I can find a meta-analysis on something I'm trying to, do research on. And a lot of times the meta-analysis will tell you, it'll basically tell you, is that study I just read right or wrong? Because you can see it on a larger scale.
Yeah. And you can't get married to research either, because you're going to end up finding, if you end up working with different people, that they're all responding a little differently, and you have to, if you're married to something, like, forget it as a coach, because there's so many different people out there and so many different needs that you got to be adaptable to the situation.
I think that's a really good point to end the podcast with, that you shouldn't marry to one ideology. And I think that's really important, especially in today's society where things are getting really, really, not just with coaching, not just with diet and fitness, but when things are getting really, really divided, like we're kind of bringing back, there needs to be some sort of balance in things. And if there's not balance, let's say in a diet or some sort of way of thinking, you need to at least acknowledge that there are faults in the way that, if you're going to be completely carnivore diet or completely vegan or completely, liberal or completely Democrat or a Republican or whatever it is, whatever side of the spectrum, if you're going to be really, really, on that side, that you need to realize that there's reason why there's middle ground. There needs to be some sort of common ground for everyone to fall under and understand. So,
yeah.
But I really appreciate, having you on, Mark. It was a really good talk.
Dude, absolutely.
If you want to plug anything up, I'll put this up on our Instagram and probably my Instagram too, and then YouTube. Little clips of it. So I'll let you close it out and tell people where they can find you and what resources you have to offer them and whatnot.
Cool. Yeah. If everyone give me a follow at my Instagram at @Megatron_. You can find all my content there. I produce content almost daily. It's on information-based, evidence-based, anecdote-based information. I'm constantly pushing out things there for you guys to be educated on. I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsors, Bambell, Metaform, and my supplement company I work closely with, which is Morphogen Nutrition. Give a shout out to Iron Intellects that I write for them. I love that website, man. It's a great time. If you're into learning, if you love learning in terms of what we talked about, man, that's going to be a great resource for people to use. So other than that, man, also give a shout out to Amino Asylum that I work closely with as well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Mark. That's going to cut off our podcast for today. We hope maybe sometime in the future, in a couple of weeks or months, we can talk again. I'd love to chat with you more in depth about certain things. And, I think you've, definitely proven to me and you have, and to people, anyone listening that, you know a lot about what you're talking about, and you're only going to know more the more and more you progress. And as you transition out of your career, which was being a teacher, and make this your career, basically start your business and whatnot, I think that, you'll one day get to the top to where you'll be one of the top coaches in the industry, and hopefully
Thank you.
branch out. So
thank you, man. I'll try to be following.
I'll try to be following right alongside you. Maybe not being a coach, but following our respective paths. So I appreciate it, Mark.
Absolutely.
Hope you guys are having a great rest of your day. If you have any closing remarks, Mark, just to say it real quick, and then we'll close it out.
No, man, I just appreciate you having me on, dude. Thank you. And keep expanding your stuff, because that's how you learn more. That's how you get better.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, stay safe and take care. Peace.